Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Welcome everyone. This is UK Islamic Mission's Ramadan 2025 series where we are covering 30 juz in 30 days, inshallah. So we are doing one juz each day with the intent of completing the entire Quran, inshallah, by the end of Ramadan. Again, same housekeeping rules as yesterday. Please have your cameras off, your mics off, and make a nice space for yourself so that you can engage, inshallah. Because, like I said yesterday, this is all about reflection. This is all about reading the verses and seeing what we can take and what we can implement into our own lives. For those who were here yesterday, welcome back again. And alhamdulillah for those who are joining us today. So, UK Islamic Mission is the organization that is leading these sessions. We have a lot going on, even on local levels. So if you're interested in that, please do get in touch. But for now, this is our online series covering the entire Quran, inshallah. For those who weren't here yesterday, my name is Dr. Batul Hussein Wali. I'm a medical doctor. I studied and got my degree in Barts in London, in East London, alhamdulillah. And like I said yesterday, I've been really, really blessed to be involved with UK Islamic Mission for a few years now. Inshallah, without further ado, we'll make a start. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. So today is day 2, which means that we are covering chapter, or better yet, juz 2. So for everyone that's got a Quran translation with them and they want to follow along, we're essentially sort of in the middle of Surah Baqarah. We're going to start from verse 142 all the way to 252. So very similar to yesterday, going to do a quick overview of the theme, so the national theme, what all these sessions are about. Again, just to orientate yourself, just so that you understand and we all understand here, what are we aiming to do? Because obviously the Quran, there are lessons in it for every situation, for every challenge, for every difficulty. And what we are aiming to, we have a specific aim with these sessions, inshallah, which I will get into. And then we'll move on to recitation and then begin our reflection on the verses, quick appeal at the end, and then inshallah we'll conclude the session. Right, so in terms of a quick intro, this year's theme, for those of us who weren't here yesterday, is all to do with relationships. The Quran is about mankind. That is the subject matter of the Quran. If you open the Quran, you read anywhere, the topic that is discussed is human beings. And the issue that we are seeing in the world right now is that there are problems with relationships. We have families, broken families, and I'm not talking about divorce. I'm talking about families that are together as a unit, but completely far apart. Children who are not engaging with their parents, parents who are not engaging with their children. We have unfulfilling friendships, unfulfilling relationships, meaningless relationships with our extended families. We have issues left, right, and center. And primarily it stems from the fact that we have, subhanAllah, the relationship that we have with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala could be stronger. And what we will see as we go through these sessions again and again and again, it comes back to this idea that when our understanding of our relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is on track, these other relationships will then fall on track, and inshallah we can find a lot more meaning and happiness and peace within our lives. So that is the theme for this year, relationships. So what we are doing is, like I said, we are going through the entire Quran, but the lens and the glasses through which we are looking at the Quran is relationships. What can I take from this verse that is going to help me build better relationships? And so that is essentially where we have this verse here. Mankind, what has lured you away from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? What has lured you away from your Lord? That is the verse, that is the theme, that what is it that is taking us away from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Because whatever that thing is, until we rectify it and we rectify our relationship with Allah, we won't be able to fix our relationships. So that is the overall. so that we can orientate ourselves to what we're about to do over the next 45 minutes or so, 40 minutes, inshallah. And now we come to today's session. So we'll begin with recitation of the Quran. I'll have the translation up on the screen as well, so that you can read along in English, inshallah. So without further ado, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم زين للذين كفروا الحياة الدنيا ويسخرون من الذين آمنوا والذين اتقوا فوقهم يوم القيامة والله يرزق من يشاء بغير حساب كان الناس أمة واحدة فبعث الله النبيين مبشرين ومنذرين وأنزل معهم الكتاب بالحق ليحكم بين الناس فيما اختلفوا فيه وما اختلف فيه إلى الذين أوتوه من بعد ما جاءتهم البينات بغيا بينهم فهدى الله الذين آمنوا لما اختلفوا فيه من الحق بإذنه والله يهدي من يشاء إلى صراط مستقيم أم حسبتم أن تدخلوا الجنة ولما يأتكم مثل الذين خلوا من قبلكم مستهم البأساء والضراء وزلزلوا حتى يقول الرسول والذين آمنوا معه متى نصر الله ألا إن نصر الله قريب. The life of this world is made to seem glamorous to the disbelievers, and they laugh at those who believe. But those who are mindful of Allah will be above them on the day of resurrection. Allah provides immeasurably for whoever He pleases. Mankind was a single community. Then Allah sent prophets to bring good news and a warning, and with them He sent the scripture with the truth to judge between people in their disagreements. It was only those to whom it was given who disagreed about it after clear signs had come to them because of rivalry between them. So by His leave, Allah guided the believers to the truth they had differed about. Allah guides whoever He will to a straight path. Do you suppose that you will enter the garden without first having suffered like those before you? They were afflicted by misfortune and hardship, and they were so shaken that even their messenger and the believers with him cried, "When will Allah's help arrive? Truly Allah's help is near." So inshallah later on in the talk we will come back to these verses and see what lessons we can derive from them. But to begin with, what we will do generally today is we are going to go in order of the verses, selecting certain verses and deriving lessons from it. So the verses we just recited and this particular verse, which is where we will start off from, verse 143, alludes to the concept of nations. So we have made you believers into a just community so that you may bear witness to the truth before others, and so the messenger may bear witness to it before you. So there's a few things that we need to touch upon here. First is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that we have made you, us believers, into a just community, wasatan. Wasatan basically means, sisters, it means the middle. It means being in the middle, being fair, being in the middle. And this is something we need to reflect upon. What does it mean to be a middle just nation? What does it mean to be moderate? What does it mean in terms of how we deal with other people as well? Because there is a tendency to different people think of this in a different way. We have very, very extreme views, that are obviously, to anyone who's studied or looked at the religion at all, we know that those views are incorrect. They are harsh, they are extreme, they cause towards corruption in the land, they destroy communities. These kinds of views that I'm sure you all know what I'm alluding towards. And then there are views that are so individualistic, very much a personal interpretation of the Quran that goes against what the scholars have said for many years and many generations. And so that is sort of the other end of the spectrum, so if you will. And then there's sort of everyone in the middle who is trying to muddle their way through and find their way through life, essentially. This idea of being just is about being simple, about being moderate, being balanced, not going to excess. The way a person normally goes to excess, sisters, is that you can't be excessive about everything in life, right? You can't be excessive. If you're excessive about cleaning your one table that you have, then you only have time for that one thing, and naturally speaking, everything else in your life will go to one side. You won't have time for the other things. There's only 24 hours in the day. So as a quick measure of whether we're going to excess in something would be to just think, are there other things that I am neglecting? Are there other things that are part of my Islam that I'm supposed to be doing that I am neglecting? And if the answer is yes, then you know that probably the thing that you are doing, you may be doing too much of. Does that make sense? I'll give you an example. Say, we can give the example of, say adhkar. Say you are always doing adhkar, but you're missing your salah. Then we can say that obviously you're going to excess in your extra supplication because you're missing the thing that is fard. That kind of idea. I hope that makes sense. What does that mean in terms of our dealings with other people? It means that we should be fair. When we are fair with ourselves, we will be fair with other people. When we are going to extremes in certain matters, then you end up going to extremes when you're talking to other people as well. And that's the way that we should hold ourselves in society. Now, the next bit of the verse talks about bearing witness. What is this talking about? Essentially, every nation had a prophet, one prophet after the other. The prophet bear witness to the truth in front of the people, and then after a certain amount of time ordained by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, another prophet came and bear witness to the truth in front of his people. But we know that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam is the last of the prophets. So what does this mean for us? It means this task of bearing witness to the truth is now ours, sisters. It's now our responsibility to bear witness to the truth. What do I mean by when I say bear witness to the truth? Essentially, I'm talking about enjoining the good. I'm talking about conveying the message to the people. In simple terms, it means talking about Islam, sharing our Islam and our religion with other people, sharing our religion with the people within our families, within our friends, our communities, our social spheres, talking about the religion and enjoining the things that are good. No prophet is coming after the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. This huge responsibility is now ours to do. And this is, again, a communal responsibility. I keep coming back to this because the way the verses are laid out alludes to this over and over again. This is a communal responsibility. So it's not just yours as an individual. This falls upon the entire Muslim community, that we need to be enjoining the good. And the reason I pick this verse to discuss is because what does that mean for our social relationships? How should we be engaging with the people around us when we have this mentality? Because this is a mentality that we need to hold as we go forward in our lives, that actually my role right now is to be the person who encourages people towards goodness, who encourages people, who brings up those conversations with people. If you're the one at work getting up and going to pray Salah, then you need to start thinking about ways to encourage the people around you to do the same. If you're managing in one part of how you're practicing, encourage the people around you to do the same. We all have strengths and weaknesses. We can all bounce off each other and become stronger. From here, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala carries on and discusses again in verse 148, so just a little bit more forward, about this idea of community. Each community has its own direction to which it turns. Race to do good deeds wherever you are. Allah will bring you together. Allah has power to do everything. Okay, this verse is actually to do with the change in the Qibla towards the Kaaba. And it was a sign that the leadership Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had now given to the Muslims. So now we are all physically facing the Kaaba. The leadership is now been given to the Muslims. But it also can be a lesson to us about finding a common point when we are interacting with other people. The community wasn't told to everyone find, wherever you think is good to look at, go look at that. Go pray towards whatever direction is best for you. If you're in your living room and you got furniture here and furniture there, if you have a good spot on the left, you can pray towards the left. If someone else has a good spot on the right, they can pray towards the right. No, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave our entire Muslim community one physical direction to turn towards in Salah. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has also blessed us with this book and the Quran and also the Hadith, so we can turn to one spiritual direction as well. We have one common morality. And as simple as that sounds, sisters, I want you to reflect on the world around us currently. The world around us currently, every single person is going in their own direction. Society is just based up of various different groups facing their own direction, and it is, to not using the most complicated words, it is genuinely a mess. And at first it was a mess on a societal level, and now we see that mess come into our homes, where children are facing one way, parents are going another way, grandparents are in another direction, siblings amongst themselves are doing different things. We have all sort of dispersed in our morality, whereas Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us that we have one direction to which we should be turning. And when we turn towards that direction, what will happen? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will bring us together. How many of us are searching for that right now? How many of us are lonely, isolated, sad? How many of us are feeling that burden in our chest because we are carrying everything by ourselves? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will bring us together when we start coming together and focusing on the same thing, when we are all focusing towards that common point of doing good. And this is particularly important, sisters, because there is a misconception amongst us that the best way to bring people together is to compromise. If so-and-so likes, if I'm holding a party and so-and-so likes this, then I'll do a bit of this and I'll do a bit of that and a bit of this so that all three people can be happy. No, the best way to bring people together is to focus on a common goal and a common morality set by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and it would settle so many disagreements and so many arguments, because the truth of the matter is your hands are bound. If it's a wedding, it's a party, it's some sort of event, you can say, and it's the truth, our hands are bound and tied to whatever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has set as a limit for us. And then we carry on, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about the matter of fear. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about the matter of fear. Do not fear them, fear me, so that I may perfect my favor upon you and so that you will be guided. How beautiful is this? Allah says, fear me. Why? So that we can be scared, so that we can be anxious? No, so that I may perfect my favor upon you and so that you will be guided. When we look at modern spirituality, sisters, when we look at these retreats that we go to, when we look at these self-help books, when we look at all of these things, when you're trying to improve yourself, the concept of fear has been pushed aside entirely. People think that there's no role for fear when you want to change or you want to make change in your life. But actually, fear helps motivate us to do things. We need love and we need fear. And without that fear, it is very easy to start feeling like you're making progress without you've made very little progress. You start thinking that Allah's, you lose balance essentially. You focus so much on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala being loving and kind, which He is, and all you do is think about those things, but you don't implement any changes in your own life. You don't do the things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commanded you to do. So we need both. We need a balance. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will guide us in our matters if we fear Him. Why? Because when you are fearing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you can't really fear the people. You don't have space to do that. And so you are almost obliged psychologically to just do what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants you to do. And in that way, a lot of our relationships with our children and our parents, these strained relationships, can be improved if we fear Allah, because we have accountability. We know that we'll have to answer to Allah for the way that we are managing things. Because, subhanAllah, human beings, we are very sophisticated in our social interactions, if I can put it that way. We can say and portray ourselves one way in our social relationships amongst our families. We can say something that makes us look like, oh, but I'm only asking this because X, Y, and Z. Oh, I meant it this way. This is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows our true intentions. And we will have to answer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala about the way that we behave. And so if we really want to improve our relationships, we need to focus on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and how we are viewing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We need to view Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in light of all of His beautiful names and attributes. And that's how we will make progress, inshallah. So yes, fear does have a role. We will be accountable for the way that we behave with people. And if we want Allah to perfect His favor upon us, if we truly want to experience the sweetness of Iman and all of the blessings that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can give us, we have to remember that we will be held accountable, and it will keep us on the straight and narrow. And then as we move on to verse 166, Allah speaks about a certain type of people. Allah says, when those who have been followed disown their followers, when they all see the suffering, when all bonds between them are severed. When the followed disown their followers. Sisters, this verse addresses what relationships will look like at the end of time in the hereafter, and it can teach us a lot about the type of relationships we have now. I'll start from something a little bit more on the far end and then try to bring it home, inshallah. So this verse can be in reference to physical idols, people worshipping statues. They worship these statues, and obviously something you build with your own hand, something that is not Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, can do nothing for you. So in the hereafter, disowned, can't do anything. It can't do anything for you now, it can't do anything for you then, right? All in agreement. Then what is the next level of this? We have celebrity culture. These people that we follow their lives intimately. We spend hundreds of pounds people are spending to go to their concerts. We spend so much time invested in them. We are feel so entitled to them because we know everything about them, that when they do something or they say something that we don't agree with, we actually get hurt. There have been obviously some political things happening across the world that we're all very familiar with. when we have celebrities that we follow, non-Muslim celebrities, by the way, we follow their lives, and all of a sudden they are promoting a certain brand, or they are not saying what we want them to say about these political events, we're genuinely hurt because we have invested so much into knowing about them. But they don't owe us anything. And if you think it hurts now when they don't do what we want them to do and say, imagine how much it's going to hurt in the hereafter when they truly will want nothing to do with us. And the same goes, if you're not into celebrity culture, the same goes with your friends. Who are the friends that we are constantly putting time into, but we are constantly seeking their approval? Family and friends. We always want them to approve of what we're doing. We will spend more. We will dress a certain way. We will say certain things. Maybe we don't normally swear, but when we're with them, we'll swear and we'll say things that are a bit inappropriate. Maybe we normally, will cover, we'll wear hijab, but when we're with them at a party, no, it's fine, we won't. We are constantly seeking their approval. Maybe we normally pray, but when we're out with them and we're at a restaurant, they don't pray, so like it will be a bit awkward if I get up and go pray. Always seeking their approval. We follow their clothing styles and their behaviors. Sometimes when you're trying to make a decision, rather than thinking, okay, what are the limits set by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and what would I like to do? We think, what would they think? All of these people are going to disown us. When the followed disown their followers. Sisters, really think about that. And the reason why we should really hone in and reflect on that, sisters, is not because we shouldn't have friends. It's not because we shouldn't have people whose opinion we value. It's so that we can be selective. Value yourself more, sisters. Value yourself. You are worth something. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants us to repent. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants us to get to Jannah. He loves us. We have value. You are worth more than following people who will want nothing to do with you one day. They will want nothing to do with you one day. And then on a similar note to the above, we were speaking about celebrities and families and friends there. What about something more specific to family? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions, what does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions? Those people who follow the ways of our fathers, even though their fathers understood nothing. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions who? Those people who say that they follow the ways of their fathers. So what does it mean when they say fathers? It means your previous generations. So you're following people who are not even alive anymore. You're thinking about what your great-great-grandfather would say about a decision you're making. And you might be thinking, well, when would anyone ever do that? I would like to give a special mention right now to the caste system, which is sadly rampant in our community. Although we like to pretend that maybe it is something that, is outdated and now we're a bit liberal and we don't. But sisters, when it comes to who your child could marry, are you thinking about the caste system? Are you thinking about what your grandfather would say? I will tell you that there are 1,000 ways to get to know someone, but caste system is not one of them. For those of you who don't know what the caste system is, the caste system essentially is, it does have links to Hinduism and things, but we won't get into that. For simple terms, it's what someone's family profession was, and then those have been made into castes, and then those castes have been ranked. What does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say? That these people follow the ways of fathers, even though their fathers understood nothing. We have Islam now. This is a very ignorant way of thinking, to judge someone and to judge what their socio-economic level will be based on something that died 100 years ago with the person who did that profession. And for those of you who are not involved in this, we all need to stop and think about the things that we have inherited from our elders. The values, the opinions. It's important from time to time to think about the things that we have taken from those who have passed away. A lot of the time, there are good things. Many of us have learnt to be independent. Many of us have learnt honesty, genuineness, truthfulness. Many of us have learnt the importance of looking after people. We have learnt so much good from our elders, but at the end of the day, there is always things that our elders may not have known, and that we now know. And now that we know it, we should take it and we should implement it. Whether that be to do with clothing, whether that might be to do with fasting, whether that might be to do with inheritance. Maybe our elders divided land and money in a different way, and now we know what the Islamic way of doing things is. Let go of the ignorance and come into Islam fully, entirely. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala goes on in verse 177 and talks about what goodness is. What is true goodness? And it's quite a long verse, but I want to draw your attention to a few things. Goodness, and then it says, who give away some of their wealth, however much they cherish it. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala lists the people that you may be giving that wealth to. Again, who pay the prescribed zakat, who keep pledges, and these are the ones who are true, and it is they who are aware of Allah. So there's a few references to things that you can do for other people. And a lot of it is about giving you wealth. Why is wealth such a big deal? Because wealth takes energy and effort to acquire. So to give it away, although you cherish it to others, is a commendable thing to do. And this is an aspect that needs to be in all of our relationships, that we are giving, that we are trying our best without burning out to try and give something positive to another human being. And if we all do that, then we can bounce off each other and that we can grow together, inshallah, sisters. It's important to give what is in our means. And then if we go forward, we're at verse 204 to 207. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes the type of person to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He says, this is the kind of person whose views on the life of this world may please you. He even calls on Allah to witness what is in his heart, yet he is the bitterest of opponents. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes that this person spreads corruption, etc. And then when that person is told, beware of Allah, his arrogance leads him to sin. It's important that we hone in on this, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is now describing a different type of person to us. This is a person whose views on the life on life might actually please you. And he might even bear witness, he might even say that Allah is his witness. This is important for us in our generation, sisters, because with social media, with algorithms, and all of this social sciences that is happening nowadays, we every day when we use our phones and we use our laptops, it is geared towards showing us the things that we like, showing us the things that will give us a dopamine hit, essentially. And what happens over some time is that we will obviously get recommended more and more things, and eventually you will find people that seem to have worldviews in line with Islam, but we should always be careful about what we can take and what we need to leave. And we shouldn't really be too taken aback if they have some troublesome worldviews, because to be honest, we shouldn't be that invested in them in the first place. So that's one thing to bear in mind, that sometimes you will meet people who seem to be aligned with you, but they might not be. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is warning us. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is letting us know. So don't be too jarred when it happens. Don't be too taken aback when it happens, because it does happen. And like I said, especially with our access to social media, especially with the algorithms, there are a lot of non-Muslims who do have some sort of conservative ish takes, which might align with some of our Islamic values, but not all of them. Not all of them. So it's very, very important to be aware of what you can take and what you can't. And if you don't think you can differentiate, then don't listen to them at all. That's probably the easiest way. The other thing that's interesting is that this type of person, when you tell them, beware of Allah, as in when you tell them to no, don't do these things, they say, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says his arrogance leads him to sin. This is something that we see a lot, sisters, probably more than we should, sadly, that actually we have a lot of people with a lot of views, different worldviews, and then we have the internet, which gives us access to all of these worldviews and to say what our worldviews are. And sometimes we are wrong about things, which is normal and which is human, but when we are corrected, the question is, sisters, do we double down? Is it when someone tells us something, because we don't like them, we double down and we carry on and we steep ourselves in the sin? I will give you an example, sisters. We have loads of social media figures, loads of people on YouTube, Instagram, wherever, who maybe they don't have the most perfect hijab, right? But then when people start commenting, and I know the nature of the internet, the way they comment is probably not appropriate. I'm not saying it is appropriate. I'm just giving an example that when people do comment and say about their hijab, instead of saying, I appreciate what everyone is saying, this is something I'm working on, I know that the correct hijab is XYZ and I'm working towards it. Actually, they double down and they say, no, it's fine, I can wear it like this. Hijab is whatever you want it to be. They start saying things of this nature. And so it's very important, and this is just on the internet, but what's important is that we reflect and see how it applies to us as a person. We have to make sure that we have not become this kind of person. How do we feel when other people give us advice? Do we double down in whatever it was that we were doing? A lot of the times we think, sisters, that religious people can be arrogant, but actually anyone can be arrogant. And so sometimes it is arrogance when someone who may know a little bit more about the religion than us tells us something and we don't like it, so we completely switch off. That is arrogance, because we think that we know better than them. We know better. In what way is it arrogance? A lot of the time we think, actually, I live in the real world, I know what it's like out there, this person doesn't know, and what's in the brackets there, therefore I know better than them, I am better than them, close brackets. This person doesn't know, I live in the real world, and therefore I'm not going to take this advice. And what does that lead to? His arrogance leads him to sin. So it's really important that in our engagement and relationships with other people, that we don't become this kind of person. And then we move on to verse 212. The life of this world is made to seem glamorous to the disbelievers, and they laugh at those who believe, but those who are mindful of Allah will be above them on the day of resurrection. Sisters, again, this is just the nature of Surah Baqarah, mentioning these different types of people over and over again. There will be people in this world that will make fun of us. There will, but it doesn't matter, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala provides immeasurably for whoever He pleases. And the life of this world is made to seem glamorous. That's not the same as it is glamorous. The perception of this life is that it is glamorous for the disbelievers. What does that mean? That the life of this world isn't actually that great compared to the hereafter. And so it's not for us, sisters. Jannah is for us. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, out of His mercy, has given us some of the most beautiful things in this world, but we shouldn't be caught up in the beauty of this dunya. We are working for an aim and we are working towards Jannah. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one who provides our rizq. And so it's not befitting of us to then be obsessed with trying to get that risk, obsessed with trying to gain the life of this world. This is something, it's an illusion that has been made glamorous for the disbelievers. We take our portion, whatever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has provided for us, we enjoy our portion of life, but we're not obsessed with it. We're not obsessed with it to the point that we get questionable incomes from very questionable sources. We don't think about what is halal and haram. We shouldn't be exerting ourselves. What do I mean by exerting? All our time and energy and focus is about the next holiday, about the next clothes that we can buy. It is about the event that we're going to host and the photo shoot that's going to happen in it. We should not be exerting ourselves in that manner. It's not befitting of us. We enjoy our portion because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has provided it for us. But why are we going to the extent where our salah, we're not praying our salah? Our fast is just hunger and thirst and lack of sleep. Where we have lost, the beauty of the sweetness of faith because we're so obsessed with these other things. And when you do, sisters, change, and when we all change our mindset and refocus and recenter towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we might be mocked. They might laugh at us because we're doing something different. But it doesn't matter. Honestly, it doesn't matter because this life is an illusion and our life doesn't end here, and we know that. We know the truth and the reality. At the beginning, we recited some verses, and inshallah, I'm going to go through those verses now. We did verse 2 and 3. And it talks about us as a single community. And this is very important. And it talks about using the book to judge between us in disagreements. Sisters, we need to refer back to the Quran and the Sunnah in everything. And we need to teach our children to do this. And particularly when we discuss with our children, we should refer them back to why we are saying things based on the Quran and based on the Sunnah. Because at the end of the day, you cannot win an argument where anyone can reference anything. I could reference my thoughts and my feelings and some theories and some cultural norms to win an argument. I can easily say, but I don't want to do that because I don't like it. I don't feel like it. Nobody else does it. It's very easy to win an argument like that. But when we speak to our children, we bring it back and say, look, we are both agreed. We are a single community. We are both on one page that we have to do what is in the book. And that unifies us. That brings us together. That allows us to make meaningful progress in our disagreements. So that way that we can move forward, essentially. It's a very simple concept, but it will revolutionize your relationships because you're bringing everyone back to the same point. And particularly children. I say that over and over again because with children, a lot of the time, it's because I said so. I am telling you. No. I am telling you because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said. If you read it here, it's here, it's here. This is the commandment. This is what we do. And this is the reward we get. You constantly reorientating them. Because one day, they will grow up and they will have their own opinions. Then it's your opinion versus theirs. And then you'll be stuck. And then we'll go forward to the next verses that we recited at the beginning. It talks about hardship. And it talks about a hardship so hard that it affects the leadership. And I want to look at it at a different angle, that the messengers were the leaders of people. Our leadership are human beings. So when our heads of organizations, when we look at Islamic organizations, they're humans. When we look at our speakers, our lecturers, they are human beings. How many of us have turned away from being close to the bulk of the Muslim community because of disagreements that we had with our teachers as a child? Forgetting that each of us goes through the trials of ego, the trials of the whispering of shaitan, and that anyone can make a mistake. So we shouldn't detach ourselves from the bulk of the Muslim community based on some disagreements or some issues that we had with the leadership when we were much younger, or even the leadership that we have now as adults. And then moving forward, we have verse 221, and this focuses on marriage and the selection during marriage. And it says, do not marry non-Muslims until they believe. In terms of the marriage selection, I think it's common sense that faith holds a huge part of that. That should be the criteria we're looking at. And you can look around you now and can look at the things that people are looking at. We keep looking at the divorce rates and the issues within marriage. Go right back and look at the selection criteria. If your criteria for selecting is wrong, everything else is going to be wrong. One thing leads to another. You can't plant an apple seed and expect a pear tree to grow. It's nonsensical. Someone may please you, but they might actually be calling you to the fire. Two things can be true at once, especially for our young Muslims right now, or for anyone really involved in a haram relationship. You might be in love with them, but they might be calling you to the fire. Both things can be true at the same time. Think about where that relationship is heading. Think about what is your end game. You're either going to end up going their way towards hellfire, or you're going to end up breaking your own heart. After this point, Surah Baqarah deals a lot with the treatment of divorced women, the rulings surrounding divorce. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reveals this verse which says, do not make a mockery of God's revelations. And this is to do with divorced women and not treating them poorly. If you want to divorce them, divorce them. If you want to not divorce them, keep them, essentially. And there's a lot more detail here, but that is essentially the gist of what's being said. Don't pretend to do one thing and actually be doing another. Follow the spirit of the revelations. Follow the spirit of the rulings. There's lots of references in the Quran to past nations who used to do trickery in an attempt to get round the revelation. Follow the spirit of the law, as they say. The spirit of the verses is about reconciliation, justice, fairness, and keeping the marital unit strong. And I think that can apply to our own lives in a lot of ways. For us sisters, for many of us who are wearing hijab and then putting on makeup afterwards. For many of us who are not wearing hijab at all and then going to the prayer room, putting on a hijab, then taking it off again. What is the spirit of the ruling? What is the ruling of hijab actually asking of us? I'm saying these things as your sister because actually nobody else is going to say this because they're going to be worried that they're going to come across judgmental. Nobody else will say this to you, so I'm saying it to you. I want you to just think within your own self, what is the spirit of the ruling of hijab? And are we really fulfilling that as sisters in Islam? What is the spirit of the ruling of hijab? What is the spirit of the Quran? It has revelation in it to follow, right? Or is it something that we should be holding on top of the head of a bride? What are we doing? Are we making a mockery? And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala discusses the waiving of rights. It's to do with the mahar and the dowry, essentially, and what to do with it in the situation of divorce. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says waiving your right is closer to godliness. And that teaches us a lot about self-sacrifice, about being cordial between people, and how sometimes we really do get in situations where we're so preoccupied with being right or getting our rights, within the marital home, within financial dealings with extended families, and how often we are generous towards each other with the intent of bringing it up later. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sees what we do. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about the rulings around inheritance. And then I just want to really end with this about leadership, because there is the story of the children of Israel. And they tell Musa alayhi salam to set up a king for us and we'll fight in Allah's cause. And then the verse is quite interesting. Musa alayhi salam says, could it be that you wouldn't fight even if you had a king? And they said, no, we would fight if we had a king. And so what happened is a king was set up, Talut, but they said, how can he be a king over us when he doesn't even have great wealth? This is very interesting, sisters, especially for us as sisters. When it comes to leadership, when it comes to authority, who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives authority to, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can give authority to whoever He pleases. In life, there will always be people who rank higher than us. At work, our family, our elders, whoever it may be, our husbands. And in Islam, that is just the way it works. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can give authority to whoever He pleases. Sometimes we are the ones in a position of authority, for example, over our children. And sometimes people have authority over us. And we will only be okay with that until we accept that our relationship with Allah is okay, that Allah is the one who gave them authority. Until you can accept that authority is something given by Allah, you will always struggle with, and you will always have problems with your relationships in which someone else has authority over you. And particularly note that the people said he did not have great wealth. How many of us are disrespectful to our husbands when they're facing financial pressures? That's also something we should be reflecting upon. Inshallah, I'm just going to mention the appeal quickly, which is the one from yesterday about educating the ummah. You can find all the details on the website. I would encourage everyone to go on the website and do donate. And in conclusion, today we spoke about leadership in the context of marriage, our elders and their viewpoints, how to handle disagreements, our role as a nation, and the importance of giving and sacrifice. These sessions will be held every day at the same time, and it will be myself for the rest of the week. Jazakallah khair for everyone for attending. نشهد أن لا إله إلا الله ونستغفرك ونتوب إليك. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.